It was a Thursday afternoon, cold, the kind of cold that gets into the floorboards and stays there. I was at the kitchen sink when I heard it. 3 knocks, quiet, almost hesitant, like whoever was standing on the other side was not entirely sure they had found the right house. I dried my hands. I walked to the door. I opened it, and I saw something that made me forget for a moment how to breathe. It had been 11 days since I walked out of the organization's office in Burlington and stood on the sidewalk in the cold morning air, understanding that I was not the only one who had been searching. 11 days since the woman behind the desk had told me in that careful, professional voice of hers that my daughter had registered with their reunion database 10 years ago, that she had updated her contact information every single year since then, that she had called the office just 3 weeks before I walked in to check if anything had changed. 3 weeks. If I had waited 3 more weeks to find that letter in my mother's cedar chest, I would have missed her call by exactly that margin. I have thought about that many times since, the way timing works in a life, the way a cedar chest sits in an attic for 3 years waiting for the morning you finally run out of reasons to leave it alone. The way 50 years of silence can end because of one October morning and one cotton blanket and one pair of hands reaching for the bottom of a box. The woman in Burlington told me she could not share Eleanor's contact details directly. There was a process, there were forms, but she said she could reach out on my behalf with my permission and let Eleanor know that I had come in, that I was looking, that after 50 years the door on my side was open. I said yes. I signed the forms. I drove home to Millbrook through the gray November fields, and I sat in my kitchen and I waited. I told myself it could take days, weeks even, that Eleanor might need time to think, that she might have built a life that did not have room for what I was offering, which was not much, just the truth. Just an old woman in a white house on Elm Street in Vermont who had thought of her every November for 50 years and was finally at 71 brave enough to say so. I waited 3 days. On the 4th day, a Thursday, I was standing at the kitchen sink washing the lunch dishes when I heard it. 3 knocks at the front door. Quiet. Almost careful, the kind of knock that is trying not to demand too much. I turned off the water. I dried my hands on the dish towel hanging from the oven handle, the yellow one with the small embroidered flowers that I have had so long I cannot remember where it came from. I walked through the kitchen and down the short hallway to the front door. I put my hand on the knob, and I stood there for just a moment before I opened it. Not because I was afraid, not exactly. It was something else, something closer to the feeling you get at the top of a very high place just before you look down, the understanding that what you are about to see cannot be unseen. That the moment you open this door, everything on the other side of it will be different from everything on this side. That you are standing right now at the last moment of one version of your life. I turned the knob. I opened the door. She was standing on my porch in a gray coat, her dark blonde hair pulled back simply, a leather bag over one shoulder. She was 50 years old. She was the age I had been when Thomas graduated high school, and I stood in the gymnasium bleachers watching him cross the stage and thought, somewhere out there she is this old now. She is living a whole life I know nothing about. She had my jaw. She had my hands, the shape of them, the way the fingers sat. and she had Daniel's eyes. Dark gray, almost blue, the color of the sky over Vermont in late November, just before the first snow comes. Eyes I had not seen in 50 years, except in my own memory, and here they were, looking at me from a face I had never seen before in my life. Neither of us spoke. I do not know how long we stood there, long enough for the cold to come through the open door and move through the hallway, long enough for something to pass between us that did not need words, that was older than words, that belonged to the part of us that recognized each other before either of our minds had caught up to what we were seeing. She said very quietly, "Margaret?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "My name is Eleanor." And I stepped back from the door. She came inside. She followed me down the hallway toward the kitchen, and just as we reached the kitchen doorway, just as I was about to tell her to sit down, to tell her I would make tea, to do something ordinary with my hands, because I needed something ordinary to hold on to, I heard a sound from behind me, a chair scraping back from the kitchen table. I had forgotten. Thomas was there. He had come by an hour earlier, unannounced the way he sometimes does on his days off, and I had let him in and made coffee, and we had been sitting at the kitchen table talking of nothing in particular, the way we do. And I had not had time, had not found the words, had not known how to begin. And then the knock had come at the front door, and I had gone to answer it without thinking, without planning, without any version of this moment prepared at all. Thomas stood up from the table. He looked at Eleanor standing in the kitchen doorway. He looked at me standing beside her. He looked at Eleanor again, and I watched his face do what I had watched it do his whole life when something did not make sense to him yet. It went very still, very careful, holding everything in place while he worked out what he was looking at. He said, "Mom, who is this?" I opened my mouth. I closed it. I looked at Eleanor beside me, and she looked at me, and her face was calm, completely calm, with those dark gray eyes that were Daniel's eyes, steady and patient and giving me whatever time I needed. I looked back at my son. I said, "Thomas, sit down. There is something I should have told you a very long time ago." He sat. He did not look away from me, and Eleanor sat across from him at my kitchen table, in the chair that had been empty for as long as I had lived in this house. And I stood between them, my son on one side and my daughter on the other, and I understood that the door I had been keeping locked for 50 years was not just open now, it was gone entirely. What I said next changed everything, for Thomas, for Eleanor, and for me. What came out of my mouth in that kitchen on a cold Thursday evening in November, after 50 years of silence, is the story that is waiting for you in the next part. And I will warn you now, it did not go the way I had hoped, but it went the way it needed to go. And sometimes those are not the same thing at all.
Have you ever been caught completely unprepared for a moment you had been waiting your whole life for? Leave a comment below and tell me what that felt like. I read every single one. And if you are following Margaret's story, please subscribe so you do not miss what happens when the truth finally comes out.